Hi, I'm Heather. Welcome to class. Today we're going to practice the first 6 poses in a sequence given by BKS Iyengar in the book Yoga, the Path to Holistic Health, specifically for depression. Before we begin, if you find this video helpful, be sure to like and subscribe. We're going to start with Uttanasana. Now, I've got a chair and a bolster set up to demonstrate what we could call an easier way of practicing a supported or restful Uttanasana. And I say easier because I'm meaning if the hamstrings are tight or the lower back is problematic, you'll want to be able to rest your head on a higher support than if you had long hamstrings or an easy hip flexion. So I'll give this demonstration and then I'll move on to demonstrating with bricks for those who can access Uttanasana perhaps with a little more ease. So if you're feeling stiff, you could work with feet as wide as the mat. Often we take the feet hip width apart, but you can go as wide as the mat, which may allow a little more access in your forward fold. And then to bring the head to rest, you've got to decide what height is suitable for you. I've got a bolster on the seat of the chair. I'm intending to rest my forehead on my forearms on the bolster, but I'm also intending to keep my back reasonably straight and focus on the flexion here in the hips. So just watch that if you are particularly tight in the hamstrings and your pelvis is pulling down in this direction, if your sitting bones are pulling down and your back is rounding in an effort to come to the chair, it might be better for you to come closer and use the very top of the chair so that you're not rounding the back. And note that it's not only about rounding the back, it's about what we're doing in the chest. So if we're rounding the back, often the chest is closed. We want to have an open chest, so we want to direct sternum forward. We want to be able to lengthen the armpit chest. That's why we're taking the arms forward. So if you're stiff, you decide on what height is suitable for you. If you're not so stiff, then we can bring bricks into the picture. We can work with bricks, whether it's 1 or 2 bricks. You can decide, do you want to take your feet hip width apart? Is it manageable for you to come down as low as bringing your head onto a brick? Or would you access the pose a little better if you took your feet as wide as the mat? So this is an example of how we could use our bricks. We've got 1 flat brick, 1 tall brick, and then we bring the crown of the head onto the brick. Fingertips are on the floor for support. But if you've got more access to the pose, perhaps you only need 1 brick, 1 tall brick. So the crown of the head can come onto the tall brick there. Remembering we're wanting a significant hip flexion and not terribly much back flexion, because we want to have this armpit chest area lengthening. We want to have the sternum lengthening away from the navel, not caving in. So find out what support is going to be suitable for you. If you're using the bricks, see if you can bring the crown onto the bricks. You may need to stack your bricks up a little higher. If you're using the chair, you'll be resting the forehead on your forearms on the chair or the bolster. But in any case or both cases of the variation of Uttanasana, we're maintaining the grip of the quadriceps, the grip of the kneecaps. So the kneecaps are flattening into the knee joint as you're working the quadricep muscles up. And if you're working with your fingertips to the floor in Uttanasana with the brick underneath the head, then can you draw your shoulder blades up the back towards your hips? And then we intend to get steady. So in order to get steady, not only are we wanting to hold the body steady, we're lessening any tendency to fuss and fidget, physically make continual adjustments. We want to stop that. We want to find stillness in our physical posture. But likewise, we want to allow the mind to get steady. So we can fix the gaze on one point, soften the gaze, soften the skin, the muscles around your eyes. We can also get steady in the breath. So notice your breath.
Slow your breath down and see that you're regulating the breath. Smooth, steady inhalation, smooth, steady exhalation. Now, as we prepare to come out of the pose, we're going to raise the head up first. So whether you're using the bricks or the chair, lift the head up, place your hands on the waist, and slowly inhale to stand all the way up. And we'll move on. The next pose is Ardha Chandrasana, and we're going to use the wall to help give us stability. We're placing the top foot onto the wall so that we can stay in the pose and magnify the expression of opening the chest. So let's take our mat into the wall. We can use our bricks. We're going to use one brick to measure where we want to place our standing leg. So sit down, put your feet against the wall, and then use one brick, mark the line of the back of the hips, and just put that brick then to the side, and then we'll come to stand. Now there's a line that we've created on the mat. We place the front of the heel, so close to the arch of the foot, in line with the front edge of the brick. That right foot, we're going to balance on the right leg first. The right foot and knee facing the middle of the room, we could say, or facing directly away from the wall. And then depending on how you're feeling in the hamstrings, the adductors, whether you're feeling stiff or whether you find this pose you can access with relative ease, as to whether you want the brick high or on its blade shape. Let's start with a brick high. Find the wall with the left foot, push the foot into the wall, and make sure your right thigh is turning out. So one of the reasons we'd use a high brick or a tall brick, we could say it's a vertical brick, is to help us access the lift of the chest. So we want to be able to turn the left chest up towards the ceiling, and then we want to be able to press the right buttock forward so this groin moves forward, right groin moves further forward, and we peel the left pelvic bone up away from the right groin. So that right buttock rolls towards the wall, tailbone lengthens towards the wall, towards that left heel. The buttock squeezes forward, right buttock squeezes forward, and we turn the navel up towards the ceiling as we rotate the left chest up. Stretch your arm up, whether you turn to look up or you look forward. Either way, this left chest is rotating up towards the ceiling and the right armpit chest is sweeping forward. Breathe. Now let's step down. And we've got our measurement there. We don't need to do anything other than place the left foot where the right foot was. We can use our brick again, tall brick. When the left hand is on the brick and you step your right foot up the wall, your wrist is under the shoulder. Then see that this left thigh, the kneecap, is facing the same direction as the toes. Sometimes it's helpful to bend the knee just to see which direction the knee is facing. So keep that left thigh turning out as you straighten the leg. And then roll this left buttock towards the wall. Direct your tailbone towards the wall and squeeze the left buttock forward so that the groin moves forward. Left groin moves forward, then peel the right pelvic bone up away from the left groin, so you're broadening the pelvic abdominal area. Go on directing your tailbone towards the right heel as you sweep the right chest up. Take your arm up. So you're rotating the right chest up, perhaps you can look up. And can you sweep the left armpit chest forward towards the wall in front of you, in front of the chest. And breathe. and then we'll step down. We'll keep our mat to the wall. We are going to use the wall again in a moment, but for now, let's do Prasarita Padottanasana, the spread foot intense stretch pose. And again, it may be helpful to use your bricks. So we'll have them here in front of us. Take the legs wide so that you've got your heels in line with the back edge of the mat. Your hands are on your bricks. And if you feel stiff, you could turn the bricks up a little higher so that you're not rounding your back. Remember here we're wanting to lengthen the breastbone forward away from the navel, not cause the chest to shrink. So breastbone forward. If you can lower the bricks, lower the bricks. If you can go further, bring your palms flat to the floor, and our intention is to walk our hands back between the feet to bring the crown of the head towards the floor. Now this is where the bricks could come in handy. So let's say you're feeling stiff, you're walking the hands back, the head doesn't want to reach the floor, then you use your bricks. Find out what level of support do you need to rest the head. I'm going to demonstrate without bricks. I'll bring the heels of the hands back in the same line as the heels of the feet. A significant flexion in the hips. As I hinge in the hips, I bring my torso forward and down. I want to direct, let's talk about the 4 chests. So the front chest, the back chest, and the 2 armpit chests down towards the floor. As I press the hands into the mat, I want to get a feeling that I'm trying to scoot the mat forward, and that will help to bring me down, to bring the torso down, bring the head down. Then from the elbow tip, the upper arm bone feeds back into the shoulder joint, and the shoulder blades right up the back towards the hips. The whole time I'm maintaining the grip of the kneecaps, the action in the quadriceps. And again, I want to find some steadiness here, physical steadiness by staying still, mental steadiness, emotional steadiness by settling the breath, steadying the breath, and also settling the gaze. Softening the skin around the eyes, muscles around the eyes, and softening the gaze itself. Then we come out of the pose. Walk the hands forward, hands to the waist. Inhale, stand up and walk the legs in, step back in. We're going to set up for downward facing dog pose and intend to rest the head on support. You could use your bricks as support. I find it helpful to work with a flat brick and then a diagonal brick so the crown of the head can press into or rest against the diagonal brick. If that feels too low, you could always turn this brick up on the diagonal and see if your head rests there. Now clearly we don't want the bricks to slip, so we want to make sure the bricks are going to be able to stick to our mat. If they don't stick, you might want to put something heavy here, a sandbag or some kind of weight, so that the bricks don't slip. But the hands are forward of the bricks. It may be helpful for you to catch the outer edges of the mat, depending on if your hands are sticking to the mat well or not. But when you walk back, start with the heels up, sitting bones up, and then we want to see if we can get the crown of the head to settle onto the bricks. If that's not happening, try walking your hands further forward or creating more height for the head to settle on. So you could turn your bricks up, both of them onto blade shape, and see if that helps. And then slowly you can work your heels back and down, but still maintain the lift of the sitting bones. The direction of the thighs is up and back. So as I said, whether the hands are gripping the outer edges of the mat or whether your hands are pressing into the mat, you're pushing so much through the arms and the hands, it feels as if you're trying to stretch your mat forward away from the legs, away from the feet. The shin bones are pressing back so much, and the action in the feet is such that you feel that you're then trying to stretch the mat back away from the hands. But observe the length in the armpit chest. BKS Iyengar was known to say that opening the armpit chest has an antidepressant effect. Observe your breath. Slow the breath down and quieten your eyes. Soften your gaze. Then we'll come out of the pose so you can lift your head up off your bricks, bend your knees, take the knees apart, big toes touching, and let's come down and have a rest for a moment. You can slide your bricks forward, rest your forehead on your forearms, keep your arms forward so the armpit chest stays long. And moving on, we'll come to sit up. So now the next pose is Salamba Sirsasana, which is headstand. And I'm aware that there'll be many who can't access that full pose, or it brings up a bit of fear. So I'm going to demonstrate a variation of headstand where we can keep the feet on the floor. We can use bricks to offer support to the thoracic spine so that we're not dropping and collapsing into the neck. But if you're familiar with headstand, you know how to do headstand yourself, then you can take yourself up into headstand. If we're using bricks, you may only have 2 bricks at home. So I'll show how you can use 2 bricks, but then I'm going to bring in a 3rd brick to work with 3 bricks. So let's say you've got 2 bricks and you'd like to work with the 3 bricks, as I will demonstrate soon. You could use a thick book or a couple of thick books there as your 3rd brick, the lowest support. And I'll talk about the 3 brick setup in a moment. If you're wanting to work with just 2 bricks, have a vertical brick and then a blade-shaped brick, so you're creating a T shape, the letter T. This brick will stick out from the wall, and that's going to offer some support to the thoracic spine. Now, my preference is to have this sitting higher, which is why I would put a 3rd brick underneath the entire setup. Or, as I said, you could have a couple of thick books as support. I've got my 3rd brick. I'm going to place that underneath my letter T. And you'll note there's a little bit of a gap between the wall and my bricks. But I certainly want a gap between the bricks and this top brick that's jutting out. As I said, this top brick is going to offer support for the thoracic spine to help us lift that area up. For headstand, we zip the fingers all the way up to the webbing, so we're not half-hearted about that grip. We go all the way, and even the thumbs can be interlocked, one thumb atop the other. Make sure that this little finger side of the wrist is pressing into the floor when you set yourself up. So the knuckles coming on to contact that lower brick and the wrists pressing into the floor. The elbows are shoulder width apart, and we bring the crown of the head onto the floor. The heels of the hands, particularly the thumb side of the heel of the hand, will roll in and press against the back of the head. And then the shoulder blades lift up. We lift the heels, we lift the hips, and we walk in. And you can establish hip width feet. That will offer more stability. So as you're walking in, the thoracic spine comes into contact with your upper brick, and it helps the thoracic spine to lift. But your job is to drive the forearms down from wrists to elbows, elbows to wrists. You should be able to see your elbows in your peripheral vision. So we don't want the elbows too wide. Narrow the elbows to shoulder width, drive the forearms down, and you'll find that when you drive the forearms down, it gives a rebound effect of the shoulder blades lifting. So shoulder blades lifting up the back, and rather than thinking about pulling the heels down, which will drag the sitting bones down and cause the back to round, lift the heels up and pull the hips back towards the wall. So the hips are coming more and more vertically top the shoulders. So again, we're looking for length in the armpit chest and length between the breastbone and the navel. And so as I said earlier, if you are a headstander, you know what you're doing, you can take yourself up, go up into a headstand, whether you're using the wall for support or you can free balance. But this variation that I'm demonstrating is for those who aren't going all the way up. And this can also be suitable if you're menstruating. So keeping the feet down, which means you're not completely inverted. Smooth, steady breathing. The eyes are soft. You set your gaze on one point. You soften the gaze. You soften the skin, the muscles around the eyes, even though the arms are working. You observe your breath. You slow the breath. You steady the breath. Continue to ensure forearms are pressing down, shoulder blades are rebounding up towards the hips. And then we come down. So you can step away from the wall, bend your knees, big toes touching, knees apart. Keep your arms forward. You might like to cross the forearms, rest your forehead on your forearms. If you were practicing the full headstand, you come down and you also rest with the arms forward. So we're still maintaining space and length in the armpit chest, as well as space and length in the front body, breastbone forward away from the navel. Abdomen relaxed. And then we'll come to sitting. We're going to move on to Salamba Sarvangasana, shoulder stand, and I'm going to demonstrate with the help of the wall for those who are not so familiar with the pose. And if you are familiar with the pose, then of course you can take yourself up into the full pose shoulder stand. We're going to keep 2 of the bricks, and we'll also bring in our blankets and perhaps shoulder stand cushions if you have cushions that you work with for shoulder stand. But these bricks can act as a spacer between the wall and our setup for shoulder stand, but they're also acting as support for the back of the pelvis. So we can leave those bricks there. Let's bring in our blankets. So you'll see I've got my shoulder stand cushions and a blanket on top, and then another blanket overlapping my whole setup so that there is a bit of padding for the back of my head, but also I haven't got the stickiness of the sticky mat underneath my head, so my hair doesn't get stuck. This belt we want to organize so that it is shoulder width apart. So we set our loop up. I often take the loop right over the thumbnail and then bring it underneath the elbow, and if I was to put that above my elbows, then that's containing my arms to shoulder width. That's what we want, unless your shoulders feel restricted, in which case you could widen your loop a little bit. But we're going to lie with the legs up the wall. That's why having these bricks here is helpful. As I said, to act as a spacer between our shoulder stand cushions and blankets, but also to provide some support for the back of the pelvis. So legs up the wall, we want the shoulders to come within the boundary of the blanket. So you might see my shoulders are almost about to come off the edge. And certainly if I was to push my feet to the wall and not roll my shoulders under, I'd probably slip off my blankets. But here, when I bend my knees, I've got my belt in one hand, I'm going to bend the knees, and as soon as I lift my hips, I'm going to walk my shoulders back onto my cushions. So shoulders walk back. I'm going to place the belt around both elbows, behind the back. I want to dig the elbows into the floor with the palms facing the body. Dig the elbows and upper arms into the floor. Roll the shoulders underneath. So I'm standing more on the tops of the shoulders, and then I can press my hips forward. So with my knees bent, I'm pressing the hips forward, lifting the tailbone up. I've rolled the shoulders underneath. I'm driving the upper arm bones down into the blankets. Then the hands can come onto the back. We support the back. We lift the back ribs up. And you might like to just stay here with your knees bent, working the hips forward and tailbone up. You may also like to explore taking the body onto a diagonal. You're stepping the heels up the wall. And still the hips are pressing forward away from the wall. Tailbone is lifting up as the heels are digging into the wall. If you've had experience and you're feeling capable, you could potentially come into a balance off the wall. So you're still using your hands as support on the back ribs. One leg stretches up to the ceiling, other leg stretches up, and you bring the inner legs together. Inner feet together, ankle bones, big toe bones together. It is important that you roll the shoulders under enough that your hands can come onto the ribs, not onto the waist or the pelvis. If your hands are slipping, they come onto the waist and the pelvis, the hips drop back and the legs cantilever forward, and we haven't got that straight vertical line that we're looking for. So it might be worthwhile bringing your feet back to the wall, reasserting the movement of the hips forward, checking in on that action again, rolling the shoulders under, standing on the tops of the shoulders, digging upper arms down into the floor, stretching the skin on the back up, hands are on the back ribs, and then whether it's worthwhile keeping your feet on the wall or whether you feel you can come into a balance. But either way, we check in on the breath. Slow the breath, steady the breath. Then to come out of the pose, we bend the knees, feet to the wall. You can remove your belt, put that to the side, and then you lower the hips. As you lower the hips, push away from the wall so that the shoulders come onto the floor. Head and shoulders are resting on the floor, and the back of the waist, back of the pelvis, resting on your shoulder stand blankets. The legs are still up the wall. You're relaxing here. Then as you're ready, bend your knees, roll over to the right side and come to sitting up.
As I mentioned, that was a practice involving the first 6 poses in the sequence for depression in Mr. Iyengar's book, Yoga, the Path to Holistic Health. I've just uploaded the full-length class, Yoga for Depression, in my video library. It is listed as Therapeutic number 17. You're welcome to go check that out, heatherkitchenyoga.com.au, and you can start your subscription with a 7-day free trial. That's it for today. Thanks for joining me. For more in-depth teaching, check out the video library on my website, heatherkitchenyoga.com.au. The link is in the description box below.